Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we have very, very big news coming out of Warner Brothers. Now, before I get into this, I want to say up front, this is not some kind of a joke. I am not fucking with you. Um, Warner Brothers announced today that the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League will be coming to HBO Max in 2021, and Zack Snyder, along with some of the actors, will be back to finish Snyder's cut of the film and release it on HBO Max exclusively next year. Now, apparently, this has been in the pipeline for months, and that kind of makes sense given the history of this. So, I'm going to kind of start at the beginning, and we're going to work our way up to this point, and then we're going to, we'll see, how things kind of played out along the way. So, I've been over it before. I'm not going to go over it too much. Is the horrible production process that went through with Justice League, and it obviously showed in the end result. And Zack Snyder was removed from the project and then replaced with Joss Whedon, even though it was kind of disguised as him stepping down because of his daughter's suicide. Um, Joss Whedon then proceeded to film a lot of extra footage for the film. And I believe he said it was upwards of it was well over an hour of the final film were re-edits from him, and scenes that he wrote and he filmed and he put in. Not a lot of it was Snyder's actual vision. And from what we understand, the original Snyder cut of the film that was shown to producers was almost 3 hours long. And that version was apparently trimmed down, at least 2 hours was trimmed out of that. So that is a lot of subplot. And keep in mind, similar things were done with Batman v Superman, where when that film came out with the ultimate version of that movie, we saw that there was over a half hour put back into it. I believe it was well over a half hour. I know the ultimate cut ran for roughly 3 hours, but it made a lot more sense of that film. And Justice League, I think, would work similarly with the same credit if we got that 3 hour cut of the film that was actually Snyder's vision for how that film was supposed to go. And supposedly there are people that have seen it, and yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to go into any of that, but after the film came out and after people sort of found out what happened with the production process and what happened with Snyder and Whedon, and what the studio wound up doing, Snyder's fans immediately came out, and a lot of people that were, fans of the DCEU came out and said, we want to see what his actual vision was. We want to see the movie that he wanted to make. And they did not stop. Now, keep in mind, Justice League came out, I believe, in November of 2017. And now we are almost 3 years later, and we are finally getting this announcement. And I have a funny feeling this also had something to do with the coronavirus to an extent. I think that Warner Brothers was looking for stuff to greenlight, especially for HBO Max, which they're putting a bunch of stuff on HBO Max right now. Try and boost that streaming service. So this would make logical sense, and I think that maybe the reason why it took them so long to get this announced was a number of things. First was obviously Snyder was on board for it because he came back and did it, which kudos to him. I wouldn't have gone back to Warner Brothers after the shit they pulled, but he's doing this for his fans. And I here's the thing. And I know people are gonna go one way or the other in the comments on this. Is like I've said before, I'm not a fan of every single Zack Snyder film. I'm a fan of a lot of his films, or at least a good chunk of them. I think some of them are shit, and I've never been coy about saying that, but I think that if you have a director that I think has a legitimate creative vision, which I think that he did with this film, I think you should allow that director to make that vision a reality, especially given what we actually got as the finished product that went into theaters. So, clearing that out of the way, they had to get Snyder lined up. They had to get the actors lined up, which is, as of right now, apparently they have Ray Fisher, who was the guy that played Cyborg, and it's rumored that they also have Gal Gadot, Ben Affleck, and Henry Cavill, because Cavill was actually with Zack Snyder on a recent Q&A session, and Gal Gadot and Ben Affleck have both been part of the release the Snyder Cut. I don't believe anything has been done with Ezra Miller, which should probably be left alone because of that whole choke slamming incident. and I'm trying to remember the other. And Jason Momoa has also been, I think, absent a little bit. Although I think he did join the release the Snyder Cut people, so he's probably mixed in there too. But the thing is with Justice League is that they got all those people. Hypothetically, they might have all those people. The only one that I think I know of for sure out of the articles that I've read is Ray Fisher, for sure. But the others are kind of presumed, again, aside from Ezra Miller because of his current involvement in legal matters, I would assume. But they got all those people back, which took time. And then on top of that, they had to get the people involved that were involved in Snyder's editing process. Because the thing is that even though there's a rough cut of the film, the rough cut of the film, as we know it right now, does not have finished effects. And it does not have. It obviously needs to be re-edited, and the reason why they're bringing the actors back is not necessarily to put them back in the suits and film new scenes. It is to uh, uh, record newer lines of dialogue so that they can dub them in specific places. And it's probably just like a kind of a tweak thing. They'll be in there. They'll be in a sound studio for a day or two, and that'll be it. It's probably not going to be anything too extensive, or at least I wouldn't imagine it to be. And I would expect that most of the work is going to go into finishing the special effects and the CGI because that was not finished. Because his project had the plug pulled after the rough cut, so there was a lot of stuff that was never finished from a practical effects standpoint, or from an effects standpoint. Period. So most of that is going to go into most of the time is going to go into that, I would imagine, and then again maybe some sound editing and stuff like that. You always have that last round of editing to make sure the final polish the film and that stuff like that. I'm sure that's what most of this process is going to be. It's probably just going to be a long session of post production. A very long session of post production. Now they did say that this would be hitting HBO Max in 2021, so we will still need to wait at least 7 months for it, unless they decide to release it early. But it's very interesting to see this finally come to fruition because I did make a prediction back in I believe it was November or October that because there was all this stuff going on online, because Zack Snyder was kind of playing with the fans and teasing the idea of doing his version of Justice League and bringing it out and letting people see it, that I said because Warner Brothers wasn't immediately nixing him, wasn't immediately issuing a gag order and saying you need to shut the fuck up and stop talking about this, that they had something in mind to continue on and do this. And at the time when Justice League came out, because it lost money, they had no real reason to invest any more time and money into it. But because the people that banded together for the Snyder Cut campaign have stayed around for so long and done so much over the course of the last 2.5, almost 3 years, I don't think they could really ignore that, at least not forever, especially because Warner Brothers, I believe, was changing hands not long after Justice League came out because of the I believe it was AT&T. I can't remember exactly. But there was some shuffling going on in the upper echelon of Warner Brothers, I believe, at the time when Justice League was being released. So there really wasn't much of a need to go back because they were kind of wanted to move forward with Aquaman and then with Shazam after that, which were two big hits for them. Of course, they've fallen back a little bit with Birds of Prey, and we have no idea how Wonder Woman 1984 is going to look. But regardless of that, this is something that I think is good. This is something that is going to help HBO Max a lot, I feel like. I think that their numbers are probably going to spike quite a bit because of this, because, again, all those diehard Snyder fans are going to subscribe just so they can watch that. So whenever that comes out on there, that month, their numbers are going to soar. I have no idea if this will be released on the DC streaming service. I would imagine it would be, given that Warner Brothers, I believe, also owns that service, because I think they also they have dominion over DC. They own all the film rights as well as the various other things. So I would imagine that it falls into that camp. But there's a lot to dissect with this. Now, I for one am excited for this. I do want to watch it because I do want to compare it to the original. I did see the original Justice League in theaters, but I haven't seen it since then. I'll probably have to watch it one more time. excuse me, one more time before I watch his actual version. But I'm interested to see it. Everything I've heard about it seems like it's more interesting and more of a complete story. And the thing is Zack Snyder can turn out good stuff. It's just that he's not necessarily consistent at it, or as consistent maybe as some other really big budget directors are. So I'm eager to see it, and I would actually kind of be interested because I feel like it would be a good pairing for the Batman v Superman Ultimate Cut, because I think that if you paired that with a Justice League movie, if you combine, I don't mean combine stories, but watch one and then watch the other, I feel like it would make one really good duality type of story. If again, if the Snyder Cut lives up to its descriptions, but I do plan on doing a review of that when it does come out on HBO Max, even if I have to actually purchase a Max subscription in order to get it. But I want to know what you think. Are you excited to know that Zack Snyder is finally going to be able to debut his cut of Justice League? Do you think that it will be better or worse than the theatrical cut? What do you think the runtime is? Or do you not give a shit at all, and you hate Zack Snyder and you hate Justice League and you don't give a crap? So, put your thoughts in the comments below as usual. I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?